Kia ora and welcome to CIO Leadership Live. I'm your host, Kathy O'Sullivan, the editor for CIO New Zealand, and I'm delighted to welcome along Suzanne Pullman, who's the CIO at the Commerce Commission. Hello, Suzanne. How are you doing today?
Hello, Kathy. I'm doing well. Thank you.
Great to chat to you again. So can you tell us a little bit more about your role at the Commission and what your team does there?
Sure. So for those that don't know, Commerce Commission is an independent Crown entity. We enforce competition, fair trading and consumer credit laws for the New Zealand public. And we also have some regulatory responsibilities in electricity lines, gas pipelines, etc. It's important to note that in this space, there's been a pretty large growth in the Commission from the new functions that we've been asked to do by the government. So market studies, retail fuel, market regulation, retail payment systems, and the groceries regulation. I note this because these things are quite significant and have also obviously had an impact on myself and my staff. So it leads into a bit about me and my team. So I'm the Chief Information Officer and the Chief Information Security Officer at the Commerce Commission. My role is to provide that strategic leadership for the information services function at the Commission to meet our future information and knowledge management needs here. That covers the full spectrum from our systems, our security of our information, Records Act for the government, right through to just providing that technology advice and the right way to switch off at the end of the day, particularly in how things are changing. My team themselves cover that full spectrum as well. So we have a team that manages information. We have information security advisor, a team that is covering the systems and solutions. So they're more the team that will enhance or provide new solutions, either whether it's technology or process driven. And one thing that's quite interesting about us, I think, is that we also do all of our support and help desk staff in-house. So a little bit unusual, I think, for a government agency, but we have support analysts and technical system engineers, and actually just in the room outside our servers for our Wellington and Auckland information system in the building that we're in. So a little bit different in that space. Yeah.
So a wide-ranging role there, Suzanne, and as you mentioned, it is ever-changing as well with the new powers of the or new things that the Commerce Commission is looking after. And part of that, there is a lot of transformation, and the word transformation, it's thrown around a lot, as if it's just a given within organizations, as if it's something that's easy to do. But in reality, transformation is hard. Can you talk us a little bit through how transformation has shaped your career?
Yeah, absolutely. I find this quite an interesting question because at first when I was thinking about it, I've come across transformation projects or programs, with a big capital T. And I think to the point, I have a little bit of an allergic reaction when you hear about them, as my original experience with them was seeing these transformation projects and programs that were created outside of the business area they were trying to transform. And you'd see these large transformation programs start work and deliver what they were expecting from the beginning without really touching base with the business themselves that they were trying to impact and change. But when I thought about it a lot more around it, I think transformation, particularly in my career and my role and the work we're doing, is happening all the time. I guess a little bit of backstory, I came into this role. So I've been at the Commission for 4.5 years now. And I started as a business solutions manager here. So one of the managers that really does the solutions and the improvements and enhancements on our systems. And a couple of years through, the CIO that was in the role went on a secondment. I was offered the role of acting as the CIO. I bring this up because the date might sound familiar to pretty much all New Zealanders. It was March 2020. I was in the role at the beginning of March, and I suddenly found myself in an acting role, getting the whole of the Commerce Commission working from home within 2 weeks of starting the role. So massive transformation just in the first couple of weeks, let alone the first 2 years in this space. So since then, I've moved from an acting to a permanent as of March last year. And really, we've been doing a lot of transformation work for the Commission in the sense of just growing as the Commission grows and making sure that we can transform and mature our systems, our people, our training to meet the needs that are going on. If I look back, we just celebrated in the last week a major change of our network provider and changing that. And I take a look at the transformation that went on, that marked the end of a journey where we've replaced all of our servers, all of our network, our commission devices, you name it, we've replaced it in 2 years. And I wouldn't have considered that a transformation journey, but looking back, it definitely was. It's a big thing we've gone on. So I guess to answer your question, transformation has really been a big part of everything I've done in IT in this space. But it just depends if it's the big T transformation or the little one in terms of my response to it.
So then your view on it, is it do you like to see it then as a project with deadlines and milestones and celebrating those wins like that network change? Or, is transformation just an ongoing development now within any business or organization?
Yeah, I think transformation, particularly when you're talking information systems, information services, is ongoing. I think if we try to stay still, if we try to do it, it's just not going to work. The environment we're around, the world we live in right now is changing a lot. And so it becomes a constant thing. I do really believe, though, that it's nice to break it down. And that's where I come to that big T, little t idea of, if you look at a large transformation program and you talk 3-5 years, it's good to have some idea of where you're going. But until you break it down to those smaller wins and you check in at each point, how's it going? And are we still aiming in that right direction? It doesn't work as well. So I really do believe, yes, it's always happening and it's something we should get used to, but not maybe in the way we used to traditionally look at it.
So with it being ongoing then, how do you manage things like change fatigue? You've mentioned, you've done so much transformation there within the commission over the last few years. How do you keep an eye on making sure that people aren't tapped out, not only your own staff, but, the wider organization around changing systems?
Yeah, it's a really interesting one. So we have an organization that is full of incredibly smart people and their day job isn't to care about IT. So change fatigue and ensuring that we're not impacting them and getting in the way of them doing their work is pretty big priority for myself and my team. What we've started to do a lot more of is bringing them in early and bringing them along the journey. So whether it's just communicating to the whole of the commission what we're doing and why, or looking at small focus groups to start the journey and go, hey, this is what we're planning. What do you think? What are the key things we should worry about? Or balancing out our needs and the changes with what's going on in the business has been pretty important. So a lot of the small things that we've put in place have just been those touch points with key business staff, or knowing their calendar and knowing what's a priority to them to make sure we're not bringing it in at the same time. You can imagine a major IT change and rollout in the middle of one of the recent market studies going live would have been a huge no-no, and you're just putting a lot of pressure on people. So knowing our people and knowing our staff has made a big difference. I think another side of it for us is the way we communicate. So no matter how many emails you might send out to staff, if they're not engaging with those emails, they're going to be surprised about the change that's coming. They're going to be shocked and not know how to deal with it. So learning to communicate with the wider business in the way that makes sense to them, whether it's in person for some staff members, whether it's emails or a quick call or a check-in, is pretty important. On my team side of things, I'll come back to the fact that I was just talking about that 2 years of change. I was lucky enough to have a little breakaway in July, and coming back on it and reflecting on just the amount of work our team had done, we were about to embark on another big piece of work. And we really sat down in the team, in the operations space, and went, do we want to do that yet? Or is this the peaks and troughs, is the term you might hear? Or is this the time where we pause? We look at that trough and go, hey, let's take a break. Let's embed what we've already done, and let's make sure the changes we've brought in, we can operationalize them. We know what we've done. We're doing it well. We've got the monitoring. We've got the alerting. We've got all of the additional BAU in place. And also just giving the team themselves that time to pause and maybe do a little bit of extra study they've been wanting to do, or take a look at some of the Microsoft courses available. So I think it's really important to balance out the peaks and the troughs as well in what we're doing. Yeah.
That's a really great point, and I think something other CIOs definitely are cognizant of as well, about that flow and where you put the effort in, and giving people a break as well to let things bed in. So Suzanne, the role of CIO, it is evolving, especially with so much transformation being a huge part of organizations pushing themselves forward these days. What do you think are some of the key attributes of a successful modern day CIO when it comes to leadership?
Yeah, I think there's always the standard answers here. All right. So in a leadership role, you should always have the vision and know where you're going. And and it's important to know how to bring your team and bring those around you on the journey. But I also, I'm a firm believer of, I think it was years ago, I was on a project management course, and they talked about servant leadership. And so for me, that's a really important reversal of the role, where I think if you take my role out for a day or a week, things will continue. We'll be able to continue providing the services, providing the support you need, because that's what my team do. I'm here to make sure that those blocks are removed from them, and that, you know, being that conduit between what my team need to do, what the staff need, and what the SLT members need to ensure that we're delivering. So servant leadership for me is really important, and knowing that it's not everyone funneling to me for the right ideas and the important things. It's me ensuring the team are okay and the pulse of the team. I also think modern leadership is taking a lot more of an understanding that work is only one part of our lives. The last couple of years have really proven that, and coming into a space, you know, of leadership, and my team are about 20 plus, and you've got 3 different managers underneath me, and we all had to meet in different ways, right? You changed how you met, you changed how you worked, and it was important to understand that one team member might be able to give their full during lockdown where another one really couldn't. And so how do you support that and understand that, you know, work and what we do is only a part of someone's whole life? Yeah.
So, you know, it has changed a lot, and, you know, hybrid working now is the norm. So how do you get the best out of your team when you have people working across multiple locations? And, you know, as well, the threat landscape has also expanded with more people working from different places now.
Yeah, this is an interesting one. I think it's a little bit easier when technology has always been a part of my life. And so managing through technology, and that has helped. I think, so we've got staff in Wellington, Auckland as well. So we've always had a little bit of a geolocation going on. But this hybrid model, and what we've brought in as well from COVID, is staff can work from home part-time. We're not expected to always be in the office. It changes, I guess, the traditional thinking of, if you can't see someone, how do you know they're doing their job? And it really moves to a far more trust-based model on what staff are delivering. And so being more clear on, I think, deliverables and deadlines, and just tracking how things are going rather than seeing a person at their desk for so many hours of the day is quite a fantastic shift. I think it's a real change to not just count the hours in a day, but count the output of what people are delivering. When it comes to how things changed and how we manage staff, I remember it was just simple things for our team. So we've put in place during the first lockdown, you know, a daily staff quiz, and that was online. Anyone can join from where they are, and that has continued throughout. And you might have some people in the office joining from their desk and some at home, and it's just that touch point throughout the day. My management team and I were actually just having a conversation about how we're finding working from home some days, and the silence and that piece you get at home to work through the really detailed pieces of work has made us come into the office, and the office isn't as busy, but things are noisier than they used to be, even though there are less people. And so there's a change there, and a tolerance level that probably needs to shift as well, and we're still seeing come through. But I think a big thing for us, for myself and for my leadership team, was really ensuring that the person was cared for first. And that was the most important thing. And so those check-ins and small things, like if people were comfortable having the camera on, being able to talk face to face with a person, even if it was through the support of a computer screen, was a big thing. Or bringing in different types of team events to just touch base with people. And when we did start coming back into the office, it's more important to go out for a coffee with a team member and see how they're doing, because you can do other things. You can do the checklists and the how is work progressing online or in person. That doesn't make a difference. But when you are in person, making it more meaningful and making that connection.
So then the expanded threat landscape, how are you tackling that with people still working from home, you know, or doing a few days at home a week?
That one's been pretty interesting. I think we have done quite a few different campaigns to meet staff at their own level in terms of what a good security looks like and what to look for. So we actually released between ourselves, and we've got a principal security advisor as well in the wider branch that I sit in. We've created the Secure Kitty idea, and it's these campaigns around what does it mean to be a good security citizen. So whether it's phishing campaigns and being careful of what to look for and spot, or right down to being careful around USBs that you get, you know, some basic things, but bringing in a bit of fun when it comes to training and educating staff. We do a lot in that space, as regardless of the tooling, the security, the systems you put in place, your weakest point for cybersecurity in the office or at home is always your people. So the training's been a big thing for us. In saying that, we have also changed some of the tools we've put in place. So a big thing for us was modernising our desktop fleet and ensuring that they were all standard builds, that patching was happening exactly where we needed it, that we're scanning them for vulnerabilities a lot more regularly than we used to. And as well, seeing what other things we can put in place for monitoring and alerting. So while our biggest thing has been the campaign and staff, in the background we are looking at, do we have the most modern tools for the situation we're in? So big thing is cloud, right? So it used to be a lot easier to scan everything, to check everything was secure because it was in a server room and you could control that environment. Now that we can't do that, what other things do we need to put in place to control it while everyone's online?
Yes, and lots of people are still grappling with how to tackle that. So, we are in a period of a war for talent. There's more roles than ever. There's big demands on staff and, a lot of opportunities out there. So how are you creating an internal culture that really inspires your people and keeps them really connected to the organization?
Yeah, perfect timing on this question. I'm incredibly proud of my team and the culture that we have at the Commerce Commission. We do quarterly surveys using a tool called Peakon, and it gives you a pulse of how your team are going and how your environment are. And we've actually just had the results last week, and my leadership team and I just spoke about how they were. And it was a celebration of the team highlighting that they like working together, they like the culture that we work in and building that. And I think a lot of that comes down to knowing, firstly, I can't do that alone. I have a role to play as the CIO in setting the leadership and setting a culture that I want others to follow. But if you don't get the buy-in, or if you're not on the same page as your staff members, you're not going to go anywhere with it. So a big thing for me, and I think it's also helped a little bit that I can admit, and I think it's fair to say, I'm newer into this role, I'm newer into this type of leadership. Being open to talk with my direct reports, so my leads, and also the wider information services team about what they want to see and what's important to them in the culture. We have teams that end some of their calls and their daily stand-ups with a little bit of a, I love you. And that little culture just came in. It's something funny, but you'll have people walk past that team and they go, man, that's awesome. How have they built that up? And it's not me. I know it's not what I've done. I just support it and build on it. And so a big success, I think, as well as that, and what's showing how this is working is, you are right, there is a massive war on talent right now. And for the roles that we haven't filled, it's been quite hard to get someone in. But for those staff that we do have, we're retaining them. We value what they're doing, and we want to continue building up their career and building up their skill sets within the commission. And I think that's showing in what we're getting in our results, but also just the team themselves. Like, you want to be at work. We have a lot of staff that go, I want a couple of days in the office just to catch up with people, just to see how they're going. And it's pretty awesome.
Hi, that's so good to hear. And it sounds like it's a fizzing culture there. Another part of culture, of course, is diversity. And, you're one of the few women CIOs that I've had the privilege of speaking to on this series. Why do you think we don't have enough diversity in IT roles, whether it be gender diversity, cultural diversity, different ways of thinking in terms of, people from different neuro backgrounds? Why don't you think we have that diversity within IT roles?
So a bit of an anecdote, a story here for some background. I went to an all-girls school, an all-girls high school, and I can remember in just the computing study classes, which weren't anything fancy, right? It was your typist and how to use Word. Very few of the class were even interested at that point in the computer. They were finding videos to watch or something in that space. And so even at the engagement level at an all-girls school, where there was no pressure for it to be a boys versus a girls thing or anything in that sense for gender diversity, there wasn't an interest. And I look back on it now and kind of go, when that was happening and when I was at high school, why did I have an interest that none of the other girls did? In smallish school, and I think very few of us that I've ever kept in touch with or seen have actually gone into IT either. I had an older brother who was doing computer science in university at the time I was growing up, and loved seeing what he was doing and hearing about it. And that, I think, is what led me into it. And really it comes down to the cliched saying of you can't be what you can't see. So I could see from my brother what he was doing, and it interested me and excited me. But I think a lot of the girls in my high school didn't have that. They couldn't see the career pathways. They couldn't see the opportunities. All they could see was it was a very male-dominated industry at the time. Fast forward to university again, and I didn't finish a computer science degree, but I started one. And again, the classrooms were heavily male. And it wasn't that any of the males were treating us like we didn't belong there. They were lovely people, and many of them I still kept in touch with. But it wasn't a done thing. It kept small, you kept losing the talent pool at that point again and again. So I think first and foremost, it's how do we ensure right from the start, from primary, from high school, different diverse backgrounds are getting exposure to what's available to them and exposure to what these careers can look like and how you don't need to be a person sitting behind a computer coding to be in IT. There is such a diverse range of skill sets necessary and talents and strengths that can be used. That's a really important part of it. And it's even part of why I've come on today, even though, I was very nervous, is that you can't be what you can't see. So I acknowledge that I'm in a very lucky position and a very privileged position to be a CIO as a female and at quite a young age in the government industry. So being able to see this and know that maybe someone else watching this can go, it is possible. There is a pathway that can get me where I didn't think I could in the past is really important. I was going to say as well is that I think it's just opening your eyes to different pathways into it as well. So the traditional idea of you'd got a degree in computer science or information technology and that led into a career in IT, it doesn't work. So some of the jobs might need that, but so many other areas. If I think about business analysis, which is an area that there is major skill shortage right now, we cannot hire staff in. You don't need any background in IT. You just need problem solving and someone that can be a bit strategic and know when to ask more questions and facilitate workshops to really get started and build a career in that. So how do we foster that and encourage people that might have thought that their job and their skill sets currently don't align to IT? How do we bring them in and give them an opportunity to start?
Yeah, it's interesting, isn't it? It's an industry-wide problem, and it will take a lot of effort from many organizations and to the education system as well. There's a lot of factors in this. So Suzanne, when you look back on your own career, are there any kind of mistakes that stand out as really that have really shaped you as a leader and that have actually been helpful in hindsight?
This is where I admit nothing, of course, right? It was an interesting question, I think. Looking back on mistakes, I think a big one for me is maybe not any one in particular. I have been lucky that there hasn't been any major thing, anything that you've really gone, oh my goodness, what just happened? But even when mistakes do happen, or when you're talking production environments and something really breaks or the proverbial hits the fan, I had a tendency previously to assume it was a fault of mine, and you start looking at the mistake and you start looking at the problem and going, what had I done wrong to cause it? And I think one of the biggest memories for me in this space was someone bringing me to that realization that the mistake wasn't an individual person. It wasn't me. It wasn't any blame for a person at the time. It was realizing the mistake was just something to learn from. And also it was a mistake was something for a group to acknowledge happened. Because a lot of the time it will never be something you've done yourself, hopefully.
And do you use failure in your team? Do you use failures as a learning? Do you have any mechanisms in place for using failures as a learning?
Yeah, I think this is something as a team we're still working on and maturing as to how we approach a mistake or something going wrong. We don't get it right every time, and I know that, but a big thing for us is trying to bring in that culture of looking at the problem and looking at what happened to the problem, separate from the people in particular. So there's a term very much used, I think, I don't know if it's Spotify or one of the others, is the no blame culture or the no blame post-mortem on when something goes wrong. And so it's the idea of just taking that step back and understanding what went wrong in enough detail that you can then go, how does that not happen in the future? So really being careful, I think, to not overanalyze something to death, because there is only so much good you can get out of looking at what happened in the past from it. But putting something into action, putting lessons in place, putting, I don't know if it's guardrails or something to stop it happening in the future. because that first time a mistake happens, I think that's fine. We're human, things go wrong. But what you never want to happen is to see the exact same mistake in the exact same way being made a second time, because that's when you start going, hey, hold up, we've been here before. What haven't we learned that we should have?
Yeah, that's definitely a wider problem. So, you're a year into your role now. What advice would you give to any other person who's aspiring to be a CIO or a senior IT professional?
Yeah. So I think the first one is, and I shouldn't admit this, but I never aspired to be in this role. I had amazing mentors and leaders who guided me and obviously saw something that encouraged me to keep going for that next role or keep going for that next challenge, which led me to this today. So as you say, it's been a year and a half permanent in that first year acting as well. I think really what I would say to people in this role is to look for those others around you, look for your allies and those that really want to see you grow. And if you are in more of the senior position, also look back and see who's trying to watch and learn from you. I couldn't have got to where I was without those people encouraging and pushing and prompting me to try. I've always enjoyed challenges. I've always enjoyed roles that make me think and have a bit of problem solving and strategic to them, but I didn't think that would lead to a CIO role. So I think that's really important as well. And I probably didn't have a traditional pathway in terms of getting here. I have worked in IT ever since graduating. And so that's been just over a decade now, if I'm honest. And in that decade, though, I never had one particular role for a long time. So I didn't come to this pathway from a very set background. I've tried everything from business analysis to project management to, at one point, I was even a defect manager for a very short stint just to fill a role that's needed. So I encourage people to try and to just stretch what you think your boundaries are. I'm very much a believer of not getting stuck in a one-lane role where that's what you're seen as. And so you are a test analyst, therefore all you do is testing, but to branch out from it and just explore. I think it's very helpful, and particularly in this role and coming into it, to have that experience of a lot of different things to lean back on. I might not be, that's the T, right? So I'm not hugely detailed in any one particular area, but my breadth of knowledge has allowed me to do this role in a way that I know enough to know when something's not quite right, but I can trust and rely on those behind me that have done really well. So yeah, that advice is very much just try different things and find people that are going to support you and help you along the way.
That's great advice, and that's all a part of that growth mindset, isn't it? So finally then, Suzanne, you touched on it at the outset, that the Commission is doing a lot of work at the moment. So what's important to you in the months ahead?
It's important to me. So as I said, yeah, it's been a big growth. So I think the Commission has gone from maybe 200 odd staff when I started to knocking on the door of 400. And so that growth really means I want to make sure myself and my teams aren't playing catch up and we're right there along the way and growing as they need to. But if I think about the next months in particular, I've actually been accepted onto a leadership course for all of government has an LDC leadership development centre. So I'm on a 9-month leadership and practice course that I'm really excited about. So learning what it is that I just don't know or where I might have blind spots. So that's me personally. For the Commission, we've got a lot of change that's just happened that we want to embed, but we're also really exploring the data area as well. So we're seeing a lot of changes in building up the data platform and really supporting the wider Commission in their growth and maturity for data and how we use it, how we acquire it, how we analyse it. So big thing for us there.
Great. Well, we look forward to seeing the fruit of all that labour. Suzanne Pullman, Chief Information Officer at the Commerce Commission, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you, Kathy.